Welcome to the Pewtercast. I'm Brent Allen, your host. Today is September 14th, 2016, and this is episode 11, Dirty Birds Can't Fly. Bucs fans, how's it going out there? Y'all doing all right? It feels good to win, doesn't it? Oh, man, my week has been on a high like we have not experienced since, November of last year. You guys doing good? This has been a good week for me. It really has. Hey, listen, some of you may know that I got to be at the game this last week. That was awesome. It was just great to get to go see our Bucs. I am so jealous of so many of you who live in Tampa and get to go to the games. I don't, so I'm kind of stuck to whenever they get a road game that comes up this way. So we were able to make it over to Atlanta. My wife and I, she surprised me for Father's Day back in June with tickets to the game, and super excited to cash those in. Got to hang out with the ATL Bucs crew at their tailgate, though honestly not as long as I would have liked, but got to meet a ton of fellow Buccaneer fans, and hey, hopefully some of you guys that I got to meet there are now listening to this, and glad to have you guys as part of the Pewtercast family. Before we go any further, I've got a little bit of business to take care of. You guys may remember from episode number 10, where we talked about we have received just this onslaught of iTunes reviews, and I always like to get to read the iTunes reviews here in the show, but I can't read them all together at the same time, so I'm just kind of picking a couple and reading those. So I've got two I'd like to read today. The first one's nice, short, and sweet. It's from Kix14, says, "Great podcast. I love the instant reaction to the game." Yeah, that's it. That's it. Hey, you know what? I love reviews like that. They're short, sweet, simple, to the point, and more than that, they count. So whoever you are, Kix14, thank you so much. I love that you loved the Instant Cast. That was kind of this idea that I had floating around, and I'm really glad that we get to do it. Actually, it helps my podcast as a whole, I think. But I love getting to do it for you guys as the fans, and I certainly know what it's like to be sitting there after the game waiting for something to come out. So glad to be able to get to do that. All right, got one more I want to read. This is from Godly Rose, says, "Great podcast, better host. This podcast is a breath of fresh air. Nice to hear a positive voice of my beloved Buccaneers. I'm on the road a lot and listen to all and anything I can on the Bucs, so it's nice to hear someone who doesn't bash on our team. I've listened since episode 00, I'm so sorry, and even loved the bonus episode on Need to Breathe. Never heard of the band before, but now I'm a fan. Keep up the great content. I look forward to an exciting Bucs season." Well, thank you so much, Godly Rose. I really, really appreciate that review, and certainly I appreciate the positive feedback. I love getting to hear that. I love that the positivity is appreciated, and that you've been around since episode 00. That's been a long time. Hey, listen, if you're new to the podcast, I'd recommend you don't have to go back and listen to every single episode, though if you'd like to, you're certainly welcome to, but one I would recommend everybody go check out is episode number 2, where we talked about changing the culture. I think the title was Losing a Losing Culture. That has kind of been a keystone for all of the episodes that have really come since. So that would be one I would recommend going back and listening to, and then coming back. And and glad you like Need to Breathe. They're a great band, my favorite band. So love getting to do that. So, hey, listen, fans, please keep sending in your reviews. Now, we've certainly gotten past the 25 mark that we needed to start the Instant Cast, but all you have to do is head over to iTunes, and it turns out what you have to do is you actually have to search for the show like it's a new podcast, and there's a little link in there that says you can do and leave a review, so please do that, and leave your rating, leave your review. It just helps other people find us, and hey, who knows, we may be coming back with another little incentive to be leaving some reviews. Well, listen, Pewtercast fans, I've got a special surprise for you for this episode. In this episode, you're not just going to have to listen to me drone on and on and on, because we have a guest who's going to be here with us, and I am so excited. I love having guests on this show, especially for this show, which is the first show coming off of a game. And there's been a podcast out there that's popped up kind of recently with mine that if you guys aren't familiar with, you should absolutely be getting familiar with. It's the Bucs and Brews podcast, and I've got Ben Schaefer here with me to talk about everything having to do with this episode. So, Ben, welcome to the show, my friend.
Thanks for having me, and unfortunately, everybody will have to listen to me talk as well tonight. But how's it going? Thanks for having me, man.
Yeah, man, I absolutely love getting to have you guys on. You guys are doing You guys are doing great work over there at Bucs and Brews. Like I've really appreciated the analysis that you guys bring. I appreciate the timeliness because you guys get your episodes out like Monday morning, Sunday night, Monday morning. Like they come out really quick. And you do great work at kind of getting the in-depth analysis, getting the numbers and taking a look at that. And I love that you guys do that so that I don't have to. Which
I mean, it's our pleasure. I mean, I'm kind of really interested in that part of the game. You know, kind of looking at the numbers behind the game, and then even going back and watching some of the film as well. So that's definitely a part that I really enjoy, and the guys that I'm podcasting with really enjoy that as well.
Yeah, and you guys have such great chemistry on your podcast, which is just, it's really refreshing. A lot of times you see a new podcast and sometimes the co-hosts don't necessarily mix right away. You know, it takes some time for that to go, but you guys. You just got great chemistry together, and you have this whole aspect of drinking beer while you're doing the podcast. Now, are you guys really drinking beer while you're doing the podcast, or are you just kind of lying to us? Come on, you can be honest with us.
We'll leave that up to the listeners.
All right, well, we'll let you guys do that. But you feature a local brew in each episode. Is that what it is?
Yeah, we try to feature. Tampa Bay is really big into craft beer. It's kind of something that's blown up over the past few years around here, and all of us definitely enjoy beer, and we try them out. You know, we try to feature them on the podcast, talk a little bit about them, and it's definitely something we enjoy. Along with Bucs football is definitely the beer part.
Yeah, well, hey, beer and football go hand in hand, like Forrest Gump and Jenny. You know what I'm saying?
Hey,
so
yeah.
Now, Ben, you get the bragging rights, I guess, of your Bucs and Brews crew of being the first guest over here on the Pewtercast. But there's also something special because you are actually playing in the Pewtercast Fantasy Football League this year with us.
Right, and I crushed you this week.
You did, because we were up against each other in the very first week. And let's see here. I've got the game right here. I've got the score. You beat my butt 143 to 100. Now, usually getting 100 points in a fantasy league, like that's a pretty good score. You could win with that, but man, you came in at 143. Holy cow.
My team definitely exploded. I had a lot of guys do a lot more than what you'd expect. I had Willie Snead.
Oh my gosh.
And D'Angelo Williams and also AJ Green, and they kind of blew it up for me.
Yeah, Willie Snead had 23 points. AJ Green had 24. D'Angelo Williams had 28. And even the Vikings defense, I mean, oh my gosh, that's they're not letting Teddy Bridgewater's knee injury kill their season. They're going after it. And,
yeah, not at all.
Oh my gosh, Derek Carr, he's your quarterback. He did pretty good too. Yeah, man, I had a couple guys come up with a couple zeros on my team, which made me real sad. But hey, it is what it is.
Happens.
So. All right, well, Ben, guys, listen, Ben's going to be here with us through the whole episode, so let's take a look. What we're going to do today is, in the main topic of the show, we're really going to be taking a look at the game that we just played against the Atlanta Falcons. Pulled out a big win there, which was awesome, and we'll even take a little bit of a preview look at the Arizona game that is coming up this weekend. And then we're going to get into a top 3 segment. You may notice it's not a top 5. Today it's going to be a top 3. We'll explain that a little bit later. But we're talking about coming off a big win. What are the top 3 reasons that the Bucs will make the playoffs this year? And then we're going to close out the show with a familiar segment with a little bit of a twist that we call Fan to Fan Live. So, Ben, if you're ready, let's get into it, my friend.
I'm ready to go.
It's a beautiful day. It's my turn to fly.
Hey, man, you know, Gerald McCoy is just not that good of a player. He never makes any plays.
You do know he ended the game this week, right?
What?
Robinson has replaced Mohamed Sanu. It's 4th down and 10. Matt Ryan is engineered 27, come from behind, wins in the 4th quarter. Or in overtime, awaits the snap of the shotgun, 4th down and 10. Here's the snap. Do we have pressure on him? He gets the bounce, passes, batted away. It's incomplete, and the Bucs will take over. Tampa Bay will beat the Atlanta Falcons, and Gerald McCoy tipped the ball in the air on 4th down and 10. The Bucs with a minute.
Welcome back, Bucs fans, to the Pewtercast. Here we are in the main segment where we're going to be talking about the game that we just played up in Atlanta, where the Bucs came out victorious 31-24 on a season opener, leaving the Tampa Bay Buccaneers with the sole possession of a win this week in the NFC South, putting us atop our division. And for the first time in a long time, meaning we're on the positive end of our season record. Even though it's only one game in, I'm still going to take it. So, Ben, let me ask you, what did you think of the Bucs in their season opener?
I think they showed that, as Lovey infamously said last year, they were Tennessee ready, or in this case, Atlanta ready. They showed they were able to execute early and also at critical points in the game. I think they set the tone early with the 3-and-out. Mm-hmm. They got the ball back, drove down the field, and got a field goal. And then later on in the game, they at the end of the half, they had a successful 2-minute drill that was capped off by that amazing Charles Sims run.
Oh, gosh.
And then also coming out in the second half, in the third quarter, they really put their foot on the pedal with 2 touchdowns, with 2 touchdown drives that were both over 75 yards.
Right.
So I think in general they show that they have a killer instinct, per se, that we haven't seen in the past couple of years. And I think those 2 touchdowns coming out in the second half were ultimately the demise of the Dirty Birds, as you said.
Oh yeah, yeah. And I couldn't agree more. This was it was such a great way to start off the season. I mean, like you said, I thought the offense came out and played huge. Defense had big stops where they needed it. Something that was different for me in this game, where I was there live. Normally I'm sitting at home. I've got the remote in my hand. Like, I can rewind it real quick and, oh wait, let me see that play again. Wait, what just happened? And I can watch it 13 times before the network actually gets it to the replay. But you can't do that when you're live. You might see the play, you might miss it if the beer guy going up and down the aisles is in your way. And then you get one shot on the replay, and then the game's moving on. So like with that big play with Charles Sims, yeah, I kind of missed it. Like, it happened so fast, so live, and just different things going. And I only had that one play, but it wasn't until I got to get home and kind of watch that as a highlight a few times that I recognized how great that particular play really was. But yeah, I thought they were great. I thought special teams did their thing. This is one of those, they talk about the 3 phases of football, and it just felt complete. There were some missteps, I think, here and there, but it's all correctable. Nothing to get all bent out of shape over. And I think the big thing that I'm noting, and I'll probably talk about this throughout this episode, is that there just seems to be, you referenced this a little bit, there seems to be a hunger this year that we have not had in a long time around this organization and around Tampa Bay. It's like they're playing with a chip on their shoulder. I talked about it a little bit last week, specifically on the defense, but it seems like the whole team is just playing with this big chip on its shoulder, and I think it really showed. In all the right ways, I think it really showed. And the other thing too, I thought it was great to see the starters finally get to play the entire game. Not just a half. Just as a fan, I was like, I'm getting tired. Like, it was just a breath of fresh air to actually have them call plays to win, not just to see what people can do, and actually let the guys get out there and do what they're going to do. So let's break it down, I guess, just kind of by offensive, defensive, special teams unit. What are your thoughts on the offense and how, specifically the offense and how they performed?
I thought they played really well. I really liked their, like we saw in the Cleveland Browns preseason game, we showed a willingness to take shots down the field, which is exciting. We haven't seen that in a long time in Tampa Bay, or ever. We haven't had an offense that can really be a threat. And Dirk Cutter talks about explosive plays a lot, and those are keys to winning. Stopping them on defense and creating them on offense. Mm-hmm. And the Bucs had 5 explosive plays in this game, which are plays over 20 yards, and 3 of them resulted in touchdowns. The Mike Evans touchdown, the ASJ touchdown, and then also the Charles Sims touchdown was also over 20 yards.
Right. What were the other two? Do you know off the top of your head?
The other explosive plays were Adam Humphries on the screen pass.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Brought them into inside the 10-yard line.
Yeah.
Then also right before the Mike Evans touchdown, he had a 30-yard catch right before that.
Mike Evans getting 2. Okay. Sorry about that. Didn't mean to interrupt you. I was just curious as what the other 2 were.
Oh, it's all right.
Yeah. I mean, it's talking about those explosive plays, there was one that I kept waiting for from someone that never showed up in this game. And I hate to start this out on kind of the critical side of it, but was from Doug Martin. We didn't see the big one this particular game, but something you noted last year was when Doug Martin got, I think it was right around 20 touches a game is when he would have his big games, and he didn't nearly get that many this game. I don't have the number exactly in front of me, but I think he only got like 9 or 10 touches the entire game, whether that's from being handed off the ball or by being passed the ball. Do you have that number?
He actually had 18 carries for 62 yards.
No, it was not that many.
Yeah.
No way. No.
18 carries for 62 yards.
Well, it's still not 20. Okay. It's still not 20. But it just, I never saw that big play out of him. It is conceivable to me that Atlanta game planned for Doug Martin, not worrying so much about some of the other guys and that they shut him down specifically. Also, was the O-line able to make those big holes, but the thing is no team depends on one person for its explosive plays. As you just said, the 5 big explosive plays by 4 different people. None of them named Jameis, by the way. I mean, certainly Jameis is a part of all of that, but
right,
those are by other people. So, but and here's the thing. I think in the instant cast, I don't want to say I blasted them, but I talked about how I thought they were slow coming out, and a lot of people this week have talked about the slow start that it felt like they got. And, Dirk has been correcting that all week in his press conferences. He corrected it on the radio show and in his press conferences, kind of saying, hey, listen, the defense came out and got a 3-and-out against Atlanta, and then we went in, went down the field and put 3 points up on the board. That's not quite a slow start. He said, I'd take that every single week. And I thought that was a really good point. It still doesn't negate, I think, the feeling, and I'm glad it wasn't just me because I've heard other people talking about the slow start. But I wanted to ask you, I kind of theorized at the instant cast that maybe it's just kind of the way Jameis is. Like he comes out and, it takes him a couple of series before he settles in and kind of, some people, that's just what they do. It just takes them a little bit to get in. And once they do, they lock in, and maybe in that time, like a poker player comes out and they lose their first few hands and that's okay, but they're learning other people's tells,
right. And
what do you think about that?
We saw that when he was at Florida State as well.
Right.
He started slow, especially in his second year at Florida State. He started slow and then came back roaring back in the second half. So maybe you're right. Maybe that is part of who he is. But as long as he comes back strong and makes plays, I think that's definitely a good thing.
Hey, listen, nobody wins a game in the first half. It's all games are won and lost in that second half, in that fourth quarter. You can't go out in the first half and win the game. You've still got to come out and play the second half. So, I think that's true. I don't know. I loved Mike Evans, as you talked about. He came up big. Austin Seferian-Jenkins, I loved seeing his big play that he had, especially after everything that went on with him this summer. I really feel like that was kind of a maturing point for him, and if ASJ has made it this far just on pure talent alone, what difference can that make when he really starts getting into the playbook and he really starts perfecting the craft that is football? If he's got that much raw talent that he's gotten this far, man, this, he could be something if he really, really gets in there and keeps doing what he's been doing. And I'm rooting for him big time.
Right. I agree. And I also think that something that people talk about in the scouting world, they talk about the combine numbers and their stats in college. Mm-hmm. One thing that you can't measure coming out is dedication. Right. That's only somebody like Jason Light would know that in talking to him and meeting with him. So hopefully, like you said, hopefully he does develop that dedication and that desire to be great, because he definitely has the numbers and the physical attributes to be great.
Yeah, he really, and I might even challenge you a little bit on that and say that he has developed that dedication. That's what it looks like. He's developed that dedication this offseason. And, I think we'll just, if I'm right about that, if we are right about that, we'll just continue to see the benefits of that as the season goes on and in future years, which is great. Well, let's jump over to the defense real quick. What are anything specific from the defense from this past game that you saw that you liked or you didn't like, or what do you got from there?
Like I mentioned a little bit earlier, I think they really stepped up in critical moments.
Yeah.
First couple things that I liked, the defense was 77% on third down. The Falcons were 3 of 13 on third down. And then also, the Bucs were 75% in the red zone. The Falcons they were in the red zone 4 times and they only scored once. And I think those are very critical points. And I think those two things right there led us to the victory, along with Jameis' play, obviously. But I think our defense on third down and our defense in the red zone ultimately led us to the victory. We only won by 7 points. And those 4 points on three of those four red zone trips that we saved, ultimately led us to the victory.
Right.
And then one thing that I didn't like, I thought overall he played well, but I'm still worried a little bit about the pass defense. It was big last year. People talked about 70% completion. And although we did play well in the red zone, and ultimately what you want to do is win the game, and we won the game. But Matt Ryan completed 69% of his passes. So I think, and we'll talk about Arizona a little bit later, but I think that's going to be something that we're going to have to work on, because Arizona is a much more prolific offense than the Falcons are.
They are. It is true. And, yeah, we'll just certainly jump into Arizona here in just a minute. But, yeah, in talking about the defense, how do you not talk about Quan Alexander in this game? 17 tackles, 15 solo, 2 assists. The man was everywhere. He was absolutely everywhere in this particular game. He played every single, I think I saw it, he played every single defensive snap in this game. In this game. Gerald McCoy was huge. Even if it doesn't look like it on paper, I see you checking out your stats there. There's just something about having Gerald on the field. And we saw it through the preseason when Gerald was on the field versus when he wasn't. There's just a difference, and I don't know. I don't know that I can fully put my finger on it. I don't know if it's that thing that Jameis had talked to Gerald about, coming out and being more vocal as a leader, and or if there's something that's happened that's just freed him up or made him just a little bit more nasty. But you can just, I don't know. You just feel it. Like, I don't know if it came through on the television broadcast, but you could feel it in the building, watching him on the sideline and certainly when he was on the field. Loved seeing Gerald.
Definitely. And Gerald, as much as people say that they don't like his attitude, Gerald is an elite player in this league. And if you're watching football and you understand it, you can see that he is an elite player in this league. He's extremely fast off the ball, and you see that in the games. He's the first person off the ball in every game, on every snap. And you mentioned that it may not show up on the stat sheet, but it did this week. He had a Pro Bowl caliber game. He only had 3 tackles, but for a defensive tackle, that's not necessarily a bad game. But one of those tackles was a sack, and the other 2 were tackles for loss. He also had 2 batted balls, and the one that ended the game.
Right.
You know what I mean? So he had an elite game. And I think it's kind of a misnomer out there, especially around the Tampa Bay area. People don't they want him to be nasty. They want him to be Warren Sapp. But that's not his attitude. But that doesn't mean that he can't be an elite player that leads us to wins, and that showed this week against the Falcons.
Right. And I think that's a part of it is, for so long, Gerald McCoy was really all we had, and then Levante kind of came in and we had Levante. But, Gerald was the guy that we were expecting. But when Gerald's the only real guy you have along your defensive line and everybody double teams him for 4 years straight, what are you going to do? And if you look, there was a lot of people double teaming him. A lot of plays he got double teamed on even in Atlanta. But when you double team him and all of a sudden you've got other guys that can make a play, it frees them up a little bit more. And you look at a guy like Chris Conte, who I know is way back there in safety land, but man, he was another guy that just seemed everywhere to me in this game. Like it just every time the ball was there, every time a play was made, Chris Conte was one of the guys getting out of the, getting up off the ground, off the pile. I mean, he was playing. He looked everywhere. I wanted to go buy his jersey. And I started looking around. Where's a Chris Conte jersey? Let me go get one of those. Put that on my fat body, because that'll look well for a safety.
Right.
I just felt like he played. It feels like shackles have been taken off of him. I know he was brought in last year with Lovey, and because he was familiar with that kind of defense and all that kind of stuff. But I don't know. It just felt like the shackles were taken off of him, and there were some others who had a big game. On a critical level, I didn't see as much out of Noah Spence as I'd like. And I'll tell it really. I need first initials on these jerseys. We've got Noah Spence and Akeem Spence, and I can't keep whose number straight, but I need initials on these jerseys. Jacquez Smith, he got injured in that very first game, and all I saw was the name Smith, and I couldn't necessarily see his face well enough to know. And I'm going, okay, well, wait, is that Ryan? Is that Daryl? Is that Jacquez? It's probably not Donovan because he's on the other side of the ball, but we got 4 people named Smith on this team. I need an initial. Come on, Jason, you can make that happen. I need an initial.
Right. But like you said, Conte, I think he shows up. He's kind of an unsung hero per se, but he did save a couple touchdowns. I know on the long Mohamed Sanu play, he chased him down and got the tackle to save a touchdown there.
Yeah.
And Dirk Cutter in his press conference this week has given him some praise. Talking about he has the cover skills of a corner. He's extremely athletic. And hopefully he can continue to make plays. He made a few plays last year. And then you also talked about, it seems like the shackles have been taken off of him. And I think, again, this is just one game, but I think that it's possible that could be the case for the whole defense.
Yeah.
I think we were playing a little more free. Quan was having a blast out there. That guy was jumping up and down and dancing, making tackles all over the place. Robert Ayers got a sack. He was excited. I think it feels like they're not being held back. Like you said, it feels like the shackles are off. And hopefully we can continue to see that throughout the season. But definitely in the preseason and in this game, it seems like the defense is playing much more free, and as a result of that, are making more plays.
Yeah. One of the notes I have here is that it was reminiscent of the old Tampa defense that we knew and loved. Back in the late '90s and early 2000s. That it was stifling. Like they were just everywhere. They were all over the ball. We're maybe not quite there yet, but we're really close. It gives you that feel of like where we're getting back to. Let's
right.
Go
ahead.
A lot
of that comes with winning too. Winning, wins feel good all the time, no matter what. So.
All the time. Let's move on to special teams. Brian Anger, he did great. 9 punts for right around 50 yards per punt ish. Pinned it inside the 10 on more than one occasion, which is that's not a bad punt when you can get it right inside the 10 and keep it there.
Yeah, I thought Brian Anger performed well. I think it was a good move to keep him instead of Patrick Shum.
Yeah.
You definitely had a feeling you weren't worried when he was punting. You know what I mean? You felt a sense of confidence every time he punted the ball. Hopefully that continues. Unfortunately, on special teams, we didn't see a lot else. We saw Roberto Aguayo, who was 5 for 5 on field goals and extra points, which is awesome.
Yeah.
Hashtag I'm with 19. We didn't get to see. What's that?
I said hashtag I'm with 19.
Yeah, right. But we didn't get to see any punt returns.
Right.
They were all fair caught. There's only one kick return. So we weren't able to get much from that. So that's something we're going to have to keep an eye on going forward.
Yeah, and that really wasn't on them. That was more of just the situation of each one of those, punts and the kickoffs. I did notice, we had Cecil Shorts back there a few times, and then Adam Humphries was back on both kick and punt return. And they were all mostly fair caught or took a knee in the end zone. So I'd be interested to see what happens when we can actually, return something and get it out there. Because we saw Adam Humphries certainly in that, was it the Browns game, took it all the way back to the house. So I can't wait to see that. Well, for the sake of time, let's move on to final thoughts and grades. Ben, do you have any final thoughts as we head into Arizona next week? And what grades do you give the different units on this team for this game coming out of Atlanta?
Final thoughts on this game. Like I've said, 36 times so far, we got the win, the W. That's what matters. And, all things are great and flowery and beautiful when we get a win. So I think that's the biggest thing you take out of this, and enjoy it as Bucs fans. I think Bucs fans should enjoy the highs when they come, because they've been few and far between over the past couple of years. So I think we should all enjoy this now. And we have a tough test next week against the Arizona Cardinals, who are definitely a premier team in this league. When we talk about grades, I gave the Bucs offense an A-. And the only thing real quick, just kind of being really nitpicky, is that I need to improve on third down. They were only 30% on third down. Yeah. But generally, we had 4 drives over 70 yards that all resulted in touchdowns. So A- there. For defense, I gave them a B+. Like I said, the biggest reason being that they performed well in the critical moments on third down in the red zone. And then the only negative being the 69% completion percentage. And then on special teams, I gave them a B+ as well, because we didn't see a lot in the return game, or many field goals, but in what we did see, it looked good.
Right.
So I gave them a B+ there. So overall, that gives them somewhere in between a B+ and an A-. I don't know what that would be, but we'll stick optimistically and we'll give them an A- for this game.
Let's weight it up. Well, I agree with you. I'm going to flip my offense and defense grades on that. I'm giving the offense a B+, for those same reasons. I thought the offense performed admirably. I do want to see more out of that running game. We never really got the running game established in this particular game. And I think that's going to be one of the keys to watching Arizona, just having watched them in the Patriots game this last week. Beating them on the ground is going to be a big thing. The defense, I gave them an A- just because of just how stifling I thought that they were. You're absolutely right though about the third down rate. We've got to get better on that. And then special teams, I gave them an A. The things that they could control that we saw them in, they just did what they had to do. Aguayo nailed every kick that he was asked to make. Anger did what he needed to do. DePaulo didn't muff any snaps. The rest of the teams got down there and forced. They didn't allow the other team to return it. We did pretty well on special teams. So overall for me, I'm also going with an A-. As far as any final thoughts, and looking forward into the Arizona game, if you want to give any notes here, please feel free. But, I watched that Arizona game and, here's the thing, and I may be out and you and I may disagree on this a little bit, but, yes, Arizona has some good players, and yes, they have had a run of very good years and they're considered a really great team. But in watching this game against New England, I didn't see anything that we can't beat at all. Like, I think we can absolutely go out there. I think we'll compete with them. Sure, it's going to be hard, but every NFL game is hard. You heard these guys talking about how great Atlanta was. They're a great offense. They're a great defense. They're a great team. Well, okay, maybe not, but every NFL team is great, and you look at a guy like David Johnson, their big running back, the thing with him is he's squirrely. He's not a bust through the tackles kind of a guy. So if we can just keep up with him in his speed and he's spinning out, I think we can get him. The Arizona defense, one thing I noticed was they couldn't really spread out to cover everybody. So they wound up overloading the offensive line and just crashed through it to create all this pressure on Garoppolo again and again and again. And in the second half, the Pats come out adjusting by adding more guys to the line. So if we watch out for that, and Dirk Cutter, we know he loves those 2 and 3 tight end sets, maybe even play with the wide receivers in a little bit closer. I think we'll get them if that's where they run to, but I think we're going to have to run the ball, and I think Doug could have a good game. And for whoever has Doug Martin in their fantasy leagues, I've only got him in one of mine. I'd say play him this week. I think he's going to have a much bigger game than what the experts are saying he's going to have. So, and the other thing was Carson Palmer, he will eat the football all day long, getting pressure on him. It was one thing I noticed again and again in that particular game was he wasn't getting rid of the ball when pressure was getting on him, and we get our defensive line back there. We get our linebackers getting in his face. We could see a lot of negative yards on their part. So I don't know. They're a good team. Can't deny it, but I don't think it's as much of a lock as some people tend to think it is.
Right, and I would agree with you in that the talent level in between each NFL team is minuscule. I think, unlike college, I think you have great teams and then bad teams. In the NFL, teams are much more equal.
Right.
And what it comes down to is execution and coaching. And I think in the Cardinals and Patriots game, a lot of what the Cardinals couldn't do could be chalked up to Bill Belichick being, the greatest coach of our generation. But I will say that. What's that?
I said, hush your mouth. We're not allowed to say that.
Hey, I don't like it, but the facts. I think I think the Cardinals are good, again, because they have a great coaching staff. Bruce Arians has shown for the past 3 years that he can put together a top 5 offense in yards and scoring. And like you said, they're a heavy blitz team on defense, which is going to be something that we're going to have to, like you said, bring in the multiple tight end sets and maybe even an extra offensive lineman if we have the health to do so. And I agree that they're going to have to, we're going to have to run the ball to have success to set up our pass against this team. But I will say that the main reason the Cardinals, I think, are really good is because they have extremely talented players on every level on offense and on defense. They have Larry Fitzgerald, who is year in and year out one of the best receivers in the league. John Brown, Michael Floyd, who are also both good receivers. They like to take shots down the field, which would be a little bit different than in the Atlanta game. Atlanta takes shots to Julio Jones, but not so much to the other players. And then, Carson Palmer is a good player, and I think David Johnson is becoming one of the really good running backs in this league. It's only been a small size, but the Bucs have shown even at the end of last year and against the Falcons that we have a heck of a run defense.
Mm-hmm.
The Falcons only averaged 2.4 yards per carry on 22 carries, which is a sign of an elite performance. Hopefully that can continue. And then on the Cardinals defense, Patrick Peterson is arguably the best cornerback in the league. That's going to be tough against Mike Evans. But they're having troubles with their second corner. They've been, mixing and matching with Brandon Williams and another corner they got there. So hopefully Vincent Jackson, will be able to exploit that. Their troubles at their second corner. Hopefully Vincent Jackson can have a good game. But I think overall the Cardinals are a really tough team. And if some way Dirk Cutter can put together a game plan where we can stop them from exploding on us and we can keep the game close and then come in the fourth quarter and it's within 7 points, I think we will have a shot to win this game. But that doesn't mean it's not going to be tough. This is going to be a huge test for our team, a huge test for our young quarterback, and a huge test for our new defensive scheme and coaching staff as well.
Yeah, I think it will. It'll be a big test, but I'm still going to sit back and say I've not seen anything that I think we can beat them. I really do. They've got good people out there. I don't want to take that away from them, but I just don't think it's a lock as many people say. And there's one more thing, and I'd like your thoughts on this. A lot of people are saying that Arizona coming off of this loss at home, they're going to be playing a little bit more pissed off than they normally will, when we go into their house this coming week. And that's tough to play any team when you get a team that's pissed off, but I don't know. I think the Bucs, we still have something to prove. Like I said, we're playing with that big chip on our shoulder as a team, because we feel like, and we feel like we've got to prove something to everybody, and we do. And what better way to do that than to walk into Arizona and to beat them in their own house for a second week in a row. And
that'd be huge.
Yeah.
That'd be huge.
They just, I don't know. I understand why people are saying that Arizona is going to be extra chippy, but I feel like the Bucs really could come in and be that much more chippy themselves coming into this game.
We'll see. And like I didn't even mention their defensive line, but I mean they have great players all through. But I will say the one X factor that we have and they don't have is the great Jameis Winston. Jameis can make things happen that most humans can't make happen. Mm-hmm. I wouldn't put it past us because of that factor alone.
Yeah, absolutely. And Jameis, Jameis is the difference maker in every situation. For what he brings, skill level, talent level, leadership wise, culture wise, all the way around. So, hey, that's a great way to end off this segment, Ben. Now we would like to know your thoughts on our thoughts. You can send us an email to thepewtercast@gmail.com, or you can send us a tweet at thepewtercast, or send us up on Facebook at facebook.com/thepewtercast. We do respond to each piece of communication we get, so send them on in. And coming up next, coming off this first win of the year with so much excitement and hype and positivity, Ben and I are going to be discussing our top 3 reasons that we think the Bucs will make the playoffs this year. We'll be right back.
She was driving through the night, through that fortune road of fame. She was looking for the man, just to powder up the pain. The power of the sun never caught her weary sand. She was looking for the man with the gun and the hat, drinking whiskey in the rain, and the Bible in his his hand. Shake a light, drown the sun, close the shades, lock the door, burn the pages of your life as your body hits the floor. And as you weep, you can hear there's an echo of a call. And through the violent, bloody night, Nehemiah builds the wall.
Welcome back, Bucs fans. It's time for our top 3 segment. Now, if you've been around this show any amount of time, you know that doesn't sound just right. Normally, we do a top 5, but instead we're doing a top 3 today. And the difference being, when I'm here by myself, we go through a top 5. But when I have Ben here with me, we're going to each do 3. So you're actually getting 6. So you're going up +1 on the whole of the day. So Ben, I'm going to toss it to you first. We are talking about coming off of this big win that we've just had in Atlanta. There's a lot of excitement and positivity, and we've finally gotten to see a little bit out of our Buccaneers of what this squad is capable of. So what are your top 3 reasons, criteria first, and then your number 3 pick for why the Tampa Bay Buccaneers are going to make the playoffs this year?
I'm not going to lie. The first thing I thought of when I saw the top 3 reasons why the Bucs will make the playoffs, I thought, wow, playoffs already. But then I reframed the question into, if the Bucs were to make the playoffs, what would be the top 3 reasons why they did? So my criteria being, this could be individual players, position groups, coaches. And I didn't use luck because that would be an easy answer, but I think luck has something to do with it. So yeah, really anything in the universe of player, position groups, coaches. And my number 3 is our running back group. I think Doug is still Doug Martin. I think he's still the same running back that we saw last year. Health being the only thing that could get in the way of it, I think Doug will put up another 1,200 to 14-yard season. I think although he didn't break off many big runs in this last game, we didn't run that well as a whole. I did see a stat from take Pro Football Focus with a grain of salt all you want. I did see on Twitter that they posted a stat that Doug Martin created 8 missed tackles against the Falcons this past week. So even though he didn't get a lot of yards, he did create a lot of missed tackles. And then also Charles Sims. I think Charles Sims has shown he's gotten better and better game to game and also from year to year. And he just has a knack to make explosive plays. And especially in this game, he made 7 people miss on one play. So I think the combination of those 2 guys, like they were last year, they both had over 1,000 all-purpose yards. And I think that's going to be huge into taking us into the playoffs. I think if we make the playoffs, those 2 are going to be critical components of our offensive attack and our team in general.
Yeah, I absolutely agree with you on that. Putting that, it's that 1-2 punch between Doug Martin and Chuck Sims. And I got to tell you, Chuck Sims has been impressing the heck out of me. I was a little hard on him during, what was that? I think it was the Redskins game, where, Mike James had stepped up into Chuck's normal role and Chuck had stepped up into Doug's normal role. And I said, Mike did better there stepping into Chuck's role than Chuck did going into Doug's role. But nobody's better at Chuck's role than Chuck, and they put him in certain situations and on certain downs, and they come up a lot. And, we saw it out of this past game, what Charles Sims can do. He's every bit as of a tackle breaker as Doug Martin can be. And, that's a really great pick. For my criteria, really I sat back, kind of the same thing with you. I said, this is open to anything that surrounds the Bucs or the organization as a whole that could really lead to a playoff berth. And I'm glad you reframed the question in the way, because it's exactly how I meant it. Though part of the fun of the top 3 is to allow people to interpret the question however they want to. But is if we make the playoffs, and I would even say when we make the playoffs, but that's just me, these are going to be the reasons why. The other thing that I did on my criteria is I put Jameis in my penalty box. Kind of like you put Luck in a penalty box. Jameis is just too easy. He's just too easy to talk about. So, they tell you when you talk about the best-selling books of all time, you have to take the Bible out of it because it sold so many over the years, and then you start talking about everything else. That for me is Jameis. Like, you just have to take him out of the mix.
Bible.
Exactly. Well, I didn't say it, and I'll let you deal with God on that. But yes, he is. So with that said, my number 3 reason, and I struggled if this was really number 3 or number 2. But for me as a specific player, and that specific player is going to be Quan Alexander. Quan is taking charge of the defense. He has energized this defense in a way that we have not seen really since the Super Bowl days. I think in doing so, especially with the other people they've brought in, it's taken pressure off of Gerald and Levante and actually called more out of Gerald and Levante. I think we're going to, Levante is not going to make it in the Pro Bowl as an alternate this year. He's going to get elected. And Gerald, I think, is going to go back into the Pro Bowl, and I think Quan could be there. He is a serious player, and I don't know if you listened to him on the Total Bucs Live, the radio show this past week, but he talked a lot about taking a cue from Jameis that is separating him from everyone else, and that cue being he shows up to One Buc Place early, and he's in Coach Smith's office learning from him, and that's showing up in games. That's paying off in the games. And he's watching more film. He's seeing what Jameis is doing that's working, and he's applying it to himself. And that is a quality that's an intangible that'll never show up on paper. You're not going to sit there, well, he spent so many hours studying film this week. That's never something we're going to get. But that is something that will be felt throughout everything. And the offense is going to be great, and they're going to put points on the board, but it's really going to be that defense that keeps points off the board from the other team, and then even turns around and starts putting points back on the board for the Bucs. And I think Quan has everything he has everything that he needs to be somebody to be a difference maker and a playmaker, and he makes other players around him better. And if you need any more evidence of that, just look to the 4 games that he wasn't there last year and what the defense looked like versus what it looked like with the 12 games, now 13 games that he was there. And so that's why Quan is my number 3.
I agree. I think Quan is going to be an extremely key component to us making the playoffs if indeed we do. And I think you talk about the intangibles. I think and kind of like you mentioned, the energy that he brings. He's an extremely exciting player to watch on defense. He flies all over the field, makes plays in the backfield, makes plays when they make short passes. And I agree. I think he makes Gerald and Levante's job easier. I think he creates more room for them to be able to make plays because he's making all the other plays. And like you said, he missed the last 4 games of last year. And I think that, and again, on the intangibles, I think the 4 games that he missed tied into his passion to become great this year. He felt like he let the team down, and he attacked the offseason, and you can see it paid off with his great performance in this first game. So I agree completely that he will definitely be a top 3 key to maybe a top 6 key because we're both doing it here. But I agree that he's going to be a huge factor in us making the playoffs if we do.
Awesome. Well, man, what'd you have at number 2?
Number 2 is a little outside the box. I went with depth. Depth on the O-line, depth on the D-line, and depth with our cornerbacks. The O-line and the D-line are already being tested. We lost Jacques Smith, like you mentioned earlier. Yep. Noah Spence is going to have to step up, and maybe Howard Jones as well. And then on the offensive line, we haven't seen Sweezy. So God forbid we get another injury. But if we get an injury at the guard position, we also have Evan Smith who can step in and play both guard spots. And then in the tackle position, we have Gosder Chairless who can step in if someone happened to DeMar Dawson. So I think depth there. I think in general, good teams that make the playoffs, I think 2 things contribute to that almost all the time, and that depth and consistency. Yeah. And we'll have to see how that plays out over the course of the season. But then also I mentioned the cornerbacks. I think we've added Brent Grimes, we drafted Vernon Hargraves, and then also Josh Robinson, who they've talked about is playing a little bit at safety too. So I think the depth there, just in case injuries do happen, and like I said, we have seen some happen, and they've seemed to hold up. I think the offensive line has seemed to hold up. They protected Jameis pretty well, and the defensive line was able to get 3 sacks without Jacques Smith the whole game. So my number 2 on the top 3 reasons why the Bucs make the playoffs is depth.
Yeah, that's a really great pick, and I find that interesting because a lot of people talk about the lack of depth at the defensive tackle position, which I understand where they're coming from on that. But when you look at how they play in accordance with the defensive ends, and how often Mike Smith is going to take his ends and move them in to become tackles, I feel like in depth, I don't want to say we're just fine, because are you ever really just fine? but I feel like we're a lot better than a lot of people think they are, particularly there on the defensive line. And yeah, that's a great pick, because should someone go down like a Jacquez Smith or somebody else, there's other people to step in. And, depth is the best defense against injury for a football team, and we are a next man up type of game. So that's a good pick, man. For my number 2, I'm kind of taking a little bit off of what you had just said, but I'm going to add to it. And I'm saying it is the Jameis Winston / Mike Evans chemistry combined with the best 1-2 punch in football running back. That is just, it's going to make our offense a masterful offense that we've never seen in Buccaneers history. But with those two things combined, we get the air game going and we get the run game going. It's going to set us apart. It's going to put points on the board. It's going to win us games. It's going to eat up the clock when we need to eat up the clock. And most of all, and I think this is what I love to see personally, is it's going to take the heart out of our opponents. That we're going to get into that third and fourth quarter, end of that third quarter and through that fourth quarter, and they're just going to be worn out and they're just going to be tired, and And I would even say if Atlanta had a little bit more fight in them, they might have gotten to come back and put another touchdown on the board. But I think they just, at that point in the game, they were just done. Something wasn't there with them, and I think that can be something that really, that means the difference between a win and a loss in a game. It takes the heart out of the offense, or it takes the heart out of the defense, or even on the offense, knowing that if their offense comes in and puts points on the board, ours is going to turn around and go right back out there and do it too, and kind of negate what they just did. So that's why my number 2 is going to be the Jameis Winston, Mike Evans chemistry combined with the best 1-2 punch in football of Doug Martin and Chuck Sims there.
Right, I think that's a good pick, and something that's exciting is that. Again, referencing Dirk Cutter's press conferences, he said that he was upset that Mike Evans only got 2 targets in the first half. Yeah. So we're going to see more of that. Mike Evans had 99 yards and a touchdown, and I think as Bucs fans, we can be excited that we're going to see even more of that.
Right.
And then also, we didn't see Doug Martin have his greatest game either. Like we said, he only had 62 rushing yards. So hopefully, and I think we will. We saw it last year. I don't see a reason why not. I think we're going to see more of those things, and I agree, those are critical components into us having a successful season.
Yeah, and think about that. Isn't that something that we have both a wide receiver on this team and a running back that if either one of them don't have a 100-yard game, we start asking what's wrong?
Right.
Isn't that something like we've got a person in each position that if they don't get at least 100 yards, we're going, hey, what's up with these guys this week? And so that's it. All right, so man, so take us home with it, man. What is your number 1 reason that the Bucs will make the playoffs this year?
Well, I don't mean to disappoint you, but I know the first thing you said in your criteria was no Jameis Winston. But for me, the number 1 reason why the Bucs will make the playoffs is because of Jameis Winston. Reason being, because he's Jameis Winston. He's a fantastic player. He's a fantastic human. All the great superlatives you can give him. And I think it's either Bill Parcells or Troy Aikman said that you need 17 games to see how good a quarterback is, 16 games to see how much they grow over the course of a season, an off season, and then the first game of the next season to see how much they improve during the course of that off season. And if that's the case, Jameis had the top, when you go by ESPN's QBR stat, he had the highest QBR in the league this week.
And they just raised it. They just raised it today. They went back and changed some sort of stat, and it went from like 142 point something to 145 point something. Just went up.
That's what I mean. And again, it's not going to be, I doubt all the games will be like this, but maybe they will be. But if he can remain consistent and continue to put scores on the board, the name of the game is points. And we've shown we're taking shots and we're executing. Mm-hmm. And I think that has to do with Jameis. Like you said, Quan is preparing. But that's because he saw Jameis prepare. Right. I think Jameis coming in here he's changed the culture. He's added a dynamic playmaking ability at the quarterback position that we've never had here in Tampa. And I don't think that can be underestimated. And I think that's justified by you saying he falls out of the criteria for you because he's a given. he can only get better. I mean, granted, he's going to have some down games, but so far through the 17 games that we saw, it's only been getting better. He's corrected mistakes. He had issues with turnovers in the first quarter of last season, corrected those. Had issues with third down percentage, corrected those, and then had issues in the red zone, and corrected those as well. And I only see improvement with him. I mean, it would baffle me to see him regress at any point. So Jameis Winston is my number one reason that the Bucs will make the playoffs this year.
Yeah, well, man, I'm not surprised that is your pick, and for every single reason you just said is exactly why he's in my penalty box for this particular list, because you're right. You're 100% right, and there's no arguing with you on any of those reasons. And, Jameis is certainly, it's right that he comes in. He's the leader of the team. It's right that he's a captain this year. It's right that he's the face of the franchise. And it was the right pick, for all the talk that they had between, do we draft Winston or not? He was absolutely the right pick. Well, since Jameis is in my penalty box, I had to come up with something else as my number one. And it may seem a little weird. It may seem a little out there, but I am calling it the Master Splinter Principle. And Ben, I don't know if you're too old or too young to have ever watched this movie, probably too young. But Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles 2, The Secret of the Ooze. Did you ever see that movie?
Yes.
All right.
Yes.
It is
a Ninja Turtles fan.
One of the cheesiest of all the Turtles movies, maybe the cheesiest. But in that movie, the Ninja Turtles met a new young friend named Kino. He's a little ninja guy. And there's a part when the Turtles head off to fight Shredder, and Kino wants to run after him and go with him, and Master Splinter stops him and he says, "No, you have youth, I have experience, but those who fight now have both." And I think that is what I think of when I think of the Bucs, is we have some guys on this team with a lot of youth. We have Jameis, we have Quan, we have Mike, we have Doug, we have Chuck, we have Vernon, we have Noah. 2/3 of our offensive line is young. We have Roberto Aguayo, hashtag I'm with 19, who is young. In combination with that, we've got some serious experience on this team too. We've got Gerald McCoy, we've got Levante David, we've got Dotson, V-Jax, Chris Conte, Grimes, Ayers, and then you add into that the experience of Dirk Cutter and Mike Smith coming into this team. That is a combination that I think just makes a playoff winning combination. In fact, it could, and I stress the word could, and I'm going to go ahead and say it even now. I think if there is a team that upsets everybody and makes a big surprise entrance into the Super Bowl this year, that's not one of the ones that all the experts picking, Arizona, New England, one of those guys. If there's a team that surprises us in the NFL, I think it could be the Bucs that make it to the Super Bowl just because of that. And I throw that out there. I don't know that I'm saying I think it will happen, but if it does, it's going to be the Bucs that do it. It's not going to be another team. And that's just what I think. And I think it's because of that. It's this, we've got this great mashup of experience and youth working together on our team right now. And it's only going to make us better. And that is my number one pick, the Master Splinter Principle.
That was extremely deep and an awesome analogy to make. And I think if all that comes together, I think it's due to exactly what you said. I think the youth and the Master Splinter Principle.
Yeah.
Is that what you called it?
Yeah.
Splinter Principle. If the Bucs make it that far, I'm going to tell everybody, and all Bucs fans should buy into this, that it's because of the Master Splinter Principle.
There you go.
That was great. That was deep, and that was very bold by you too. And I could not be happier if that were the case.
That would be, I remember when we hired Gruden all those years ago. It was 2001 in that offseason. And I remember thinking back then, and there's no way I can prove this now, but you just have to take my word that it's what happened, that it was over the course of that summer after they got him from the Raiders that year. And I said to my friend, I said, you watch, it's going to be the Bucs and the Raiders in the playoffs this year, or in the Super Bowl this year. And it will either be the closest game that has ever happened and the Bucs will edge them out, or it'll be a complete blowout and the Bucs are going to do it. There's no way the Raiders will blow us out, but it's going to be one of those two. And damn it, I was right. We all know how that game went down if you're a Bucs fan. Man, that was a good day, and we could be making a return. I'm not saying we will. I'm just saying we could, and it wouldn't surprise me. And it'll be something. I did read. I think Greg Allman posted it today that Las Vegas has adjusted its odds for the Bucs to make the Super Bowl. It was at 101, and just based off the play of this one game, they split it in half, and now it's 50-1 for the Bucs to make the playoffs this year. So. All right, fans. Well, we would now like to know how your picks stack up against ours, or was there something we missed? Well, you can let us know by connecting with us on Twitter at the Pewtercast or on Facebook.com/thepewtercast. Or for you more winded types, shoot us an email to thepewtercast@gmail.com. Well, Ben, before we get out of here, let's take a look at this week's poll that we put out on Twitter.
It's real bad. Okay? I don't like those numbers at all.
Just one poll? Those things aren't scientific.
Yes, they are. All this is science. This is math.
All right. Well, for this week's poll, we had a really simple question, one that anybody should have been able to just make a quick selection for, and it's who was the Bucs MVP this week against Atlanta? And they only allow us to give you 4 choices. So the choices that we had were Jameis Winston, Gerald McCoy, Quan Alexander, or we left it as a write-in option. Ben, which one would you pick, and who do you think people out there picked?
I think you can probably guess who I picked, and you can probably guess who the people picked. Although Quan did have a great game, and Gerald had a great game as well, I think the answer is Jameis Winston. I'll beat that like a dead horse. Jameis is the man, and I think he was the MVP of this game.
Well, you and 57% of the people out there agreed with you. Jameis Winston by far took off with this one. Quan Alexander came up with a rather distant second at 32%. We only had one write-in option, though. And any guesses as to who the one write-in option was?
I mean, now that when I think about it, I'm thinking somebody who's trying to be funny, and they might put like a backup offensive lineman. But if that's not the case, I would say Mike Evans.
Now, let me just say this: he defended 2 touchdown runs, saved us, or 2 touchdown passes, or whatever it was.
Chris Conte.
Chris Conte came in at the write-in option, and that wasn't a bad answer. It really, because if they got those 2 touchdowns, we'd be having a very different conversation right now. So I thought that was pretty good. All right, folks. Well, that's going to do it for this segment. Coming up next, Ben and I are going to crack open a brew each, and we're going to close out the show with a little segment called Fan to Fan Live. Stay tuned. Hey, Pewtercast fans, Brent Allen here, and I just wanted to take a moment to say thank you so much for how you've been supporting the show. Whether you've been downloading the show or sharing it with your friends, or you've been commenting on Facebook or on Twitter, or you've sent me an email, the love and support you guys have shown for the show has been outstanding. It has been phenomenal. I've been watching the numbers. I get those reports literally every day. Anytime I pop online and I look at them. And the numbers just continue to climb. They continue to spike. They continue to just, everything's moving up and to the right. And I am so thankful for all of you guys who have really been supporting the show. And I wanted to let you guys know about a new way that you can support the show. You can support us financially, which would really help keep the lights on here, because it does cost a little bit to do this. And one way you can do that, you can leave a one-time donation over at paypal.me/the Pewtercast. So you can leave a little tip over there for us that'll help us kind of offset some of the cost of the fees. And hey, listen, if you are interested in becoming an official sponsor of the Pewtercast, I would love to talk to you about that. Just shoot me an email over at thepewtercast@gmail.com, put sponsorship in the subject line, and I'd love to have that conversation with you. Welcome back to the Pewtercast, Bucs fans. Well, hey, listen, if you've been listening to this show for any time at all, you may be familiar with a segment that we do here called Fan to Fan, which is basically where I sit back, like we're hanging out at a bar, having a beer, and I just kind of talk to you guys unscripted about certain things that I have on my chest that's related to the Bucs. Well, tonight, I thought because we have Ben here that, from the Bucs and Brews podcast, that we'd have a brew, and we'd talk Bucs right here live. Ben, what do you think about that, man?
I could not agree more.
All right. Well, we each got a brew here. Let's crack them open, and you get to go first. What do you got?
Well, my question for you is someone who is not in the Tampa Bay area. What drew you to becoming a Bucs fan?
Well, actually, I used to live in the Tampa Bay area. I went to college over in the Clearwater area, and I grew up in Lexington, Kentucky, where the closest NFL team was Cincinnati. And it was Cincinnati. So needless to say, I did not have an NFL team growing up that I was particularly fond of. So when I came to Tampa, it was in 1998. Was when I was a freshman in college there, and of course that's right when Raymond James Stadium had just opened, and they just changed. I think it was that year was the year they changed the colors. Maybe it was the year previous. And everything was just swinging up, and Bucs Mania was running wild, and I didn't have anything to latch on to NFL wise. So, and I was there for 3-4 years, I left the year that we won the Super Bowl, like right before that. So, and I've been addicted to the Bucs since, for how to do that. I've not been able, I got to admit, there's been a few times over the years that I've gone, okay, I can't be a fan of this team anymore. I need to find a new team, and I just can't do it. And I think that's how I know I'm actually just addicted. Like I try to quit, but I can't. So I'm just going to embrace it and just be this, and we'll kick it up to the next level, and we'll actually make a podcast about the dang team. Right. So that's it. How about yourself, man? How'd you become a fan?
Well, actually, kind of a thing around Tampa that a lot of hardcore Bucs fans don't like are people that are fans of another team as well. Like when the Cowboys come play here, there's always a lot of Cowboys jerseys. Sure. At Raymond James Stadium.
Giants. What is with the Giants coming and filling out having more fans in the stadium for the Giants games than we do ourselves? Oh my gosh. Yeah,
it's ridiculous. So I think that's kind of what Tampa is. You know what I mean? There's people from all around the country around here. It's like a retirement spot. The kind of the thing about there's a lot of old people live here and stuff. Yeah. But there is a multitude of fans, and honestly, it's sad to say that my Bucs fandom grew from one of those types of people. I grew up a Bears fan.
Okay.
And I'm originally from Illinois, and I got a lot of family up there. And when I came down here, I was a huge Bears fan. But I did witness the Super Bowl and all the Bucs glory years and stuff like that. But I didn't really get like addicted to the Bucs until Lovie Smith came. Because I was a Lovie Smith fan.
Weird. Okay.
I was always a Bucs fan. I was here. I did enjoy the Bucs, but I'm a Bears fan and a Bucs fan. But the addiction to the Bucs, as you said, grew when Lovie got here because I thought he was really the person that was going to turn it around. Mm-hmm. That didn't end up happening. But he did get us Jameis, and ever since he got here, I can't get enough Bucs. You know what I mean? And then kind of the other guys in the Bucs and Brews podcast as well. Those guys, they get on me for that. Those guys have been Bucs lifers. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
They get on me for that. It's like, oh, you're not a real Bucs fan and stuff like that. But at this point, I love the Bucs just about as much as anybody. But yeah, it's kind of my story. Some people might hate on it. That's what it is.
I was thinking about that the other day. I was, and here's how I kind of feel about Lovie. It's easy to disrespect the guy because of what we experienced over the last couple of years, but it's hard to disrespect the guy because he was such a big part of that winning culture shift back when Dungy was here. And I kind of feel like Lovie, like I feel about most of my ex-girlfriends or the bad decisions I've made in life. Like without making those decisions, I wouldn't be where I am today. So it's hard to kind of wish those away, because as you just pointed out, without Lovie, we would not have Jameis, right? Yeah. Without Lovie, honestly, we probably would not have Jason Light. who I think we can all agree is the best GM Tampa Bay has ever had. And
Yeah.
oh my God, let's keep him
so far
forever.
it seemed that way.
Yeah. So it's hard for me to hate on those 2 years that we had Lovey because it got us Dirk Cutter. Lovey went out and hired Dirk Cutter as far as we know. I mean, I can't imagine Jason Light came in and said, you have to hire this guy. He was available. And so there's that part of Lovey got us to where we are, and you could say the same thing with Sam Weish, who, I know just had that heart surgery and, just all the guys that came before, but it's been a long, hard road. So don't let them hate on you too much, man. You can't,
I don't let him hate on me too much. I take it. You know what I mean? It's all part of the business of being a Bucs fan.
There you go. Well, here's something I wanted to talk to you about. This I brought this up I think on the last episode, talking about Mike Glennon, and I it's the thing that has kind of bugged me throughout preseason and really throughout this offseason. We keep talking about how he's this great backup, and sure, he probably is. I mean, he had a couple good starts for us a couple years ago. They talked about how, Mike Glennon's the quarterback of the future. Well, when the future got here, we went out and got Josh McCown. And then we drafted Jameis, and rightly so. But everybody keeps talking about Mike Glennon being this great guy, and, he's absolutely going somewhere else next year. And I'm not trying to bag on Mike Glennon, but if he was so great, why is he still here? You know what I'm saying? Like, can we just call him a really good backup and maybe get rid of eating up another roster spot? Which, I mean, nothing against Griffin, but if Mike Glennon's this great backup, great, let's go with that and get rid of that roster spot and use it for something to build a little more depth into, maybe our linebacking core or something like that. But I'm curious as to your thoughts on Mike Glennon, on his trade value, on, is he really going to go somewhere next year, or do you think we get him as a, kind of a lifelong backup to Jameis?
I doubt we'll have him back. And I think, I'm sure the Vikings, when Teddy Bridgewater went down, they ended up getting Sam Bradford, in the end, but I'm sure they called, the Bucs about that. But I guess we wanted too much for it. I mean, they gave up a heck of a lot for Bradford, but Mike Glennon, I think he is what he is. You know what I mean? You say he's a backup. I think that's what he is. And I think the reason he's still here is because he's still on his rookie contract.
Right.
And the reason we keep Ryan Griffin is because Glennon's more than likely gone after this year. I think if we were going to re-sign him, we may have seen that happen before this season. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? But I'm sure as a competitor, he wants a shot to compete for a starting job. And he's not going to get that here with Jameis. But I don't think he's a bad player. I think he, when we saw him start, I think he's started 13 games or something like that. I think he is what he is. He doesn't take shots. He dumps the ball off a lot. But I think he is a smart player. And I think he makes good decisions, which I guess is, what a backup is. But that's not to say that he couldn't develop into a much better player. Just we haven't seen it. You know what I mean? And then the preseason he looked pretty bad this year, but that's without a game plan and all that stuff. But I mean, in general on Mike Glennon, I think he's average to, slightly below average quarterback in the NFL.
And that's what I'm saying. I mean, everybody keeps talking about him not being here next year, but that depends on another team taking him. And every time they've asked Jason Light that I've seen in press conferences, if you take any calls about Mike Glennon, his answer has kind of sheepishly been no. Especially leading through the draft. And I can't say that I don't know that Jason Light has given a press conference since the whole thing happened with Teddy Bridgewater up in Minnesota. But I mean, as you point out, they gave up a crap ton to get Sam Bradford, which it's Sam Bradford.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just Sam Bradford. I mean, oh my God, I think we would have gladly given up Mike Glennon for what was it? A first round and a fourth round pick. I think we would have done that, especially if we like Griffin as much as we do. But Mike Glennon's trade value all depends on demand for him. And maybe people are just waiting for him to hit the free agent market. And I don't know. I mean, for me, what I see is I just don't think that there's that much of a market. And I think certainly Mike Glennon would be smart to come out of this rookie deal and test the waters, kind of a little bit like what Doug Martin did this last year, coming out of his contract, is test the waters, see what's out there, see what's not out there. I just have a feeling, and I could be wrong, that Mike Glennon is not going to find what he's really looking for out there. And I mean, as any competitor, you don't be relegated to career backup. I mean, that's a crappy position, but I mean, at least you're in the league. At least you're making the money you're going to make. And let's face it, Jameis Winston, God forbid anything ever happened to him, but he is the kind of player that if he gets hurt, he could get seriously hurt. And we're going to need a Mike Glennon. And I would personally be okay paying Mike Glennon more than regular backup quarterback money to stay with the Bucs and sign a long-term deal and just cut Ryan Griffin and let him go. But I just don't see that there being a big market out there for Glennon, even in this upcoming year. I mean, he can test the waters and he'd be great to do so, but I don't know. I don't know. I
think that would be ideal if we do sign him to a long-term deal, because I think he is a good backup quarterback, and we haven't seen enough from Ryan Griffin to kind of, kind of solidify that. Like, would we feel? We may not feel comfortable with either of them coming into the game if Jameis goes down, but I feel more comfortable with Mike Glennon still at this point over Ryan Griffin.
Sure. Yeah, I think we all do.
Yeah, so I think. I think Glennon. I think someone will give him a shot. Whether it's right or wrong. I mean, Brock Osweiler got a huge deal this year, and I think there's teams out there that are quarterback hungry. And someone's gonna take a shot on him. Cleveland RG3 is already out for half the season or whatever. He may end up back in Cleveland with Josh McCown.
Right. But see, that's another point. They're gonna ride with Josh McCown over calling up Mike Glennon in Cleveland. And I mean nothing against Josh McCown. But I don't know. Are they going for another number one pick in Cleveland? Thank you, Josh McCown. I don't hate you because we got Jameis because of you. But, Josh McCown's another one of those guys. He was a career backup, and he's now floating around the league in kind of really the twilight of his years of his career, as a I don't know what you call it, a substitute quarterback until they can get one drafted.
Like a placeholder type guy.
Yeah. I mean, that's certainly what he was for us. That's what he was with the Browns last year. Nobody signs Josh McCown expecting him to be their long-term solution. Not at this point in his career.
Right.
And Mike Glennon, I don't know. It makes me wonder what other GMs out there are not seeing in Mike Glennon that makes them not call up Jason Light. So. Yeah.
Yeah. We'll see what happens. Again, I think the most likely scenario is that he plays out his contract with us at the end of the year, and then he tests free agency, and someone gives him a ridiculous deal that he may not deserve, and then he goes over there and does what he does on a different team.
Hey, you know what? If they do that, I'd be happy for him. If he got a ridiculous deal, I'd be happy for him.
Right. Of course.
So,
yep.
Yeah. So, you got anything else you want to talk about? Get off your chest.
I'm sitting here kind of thinking about it, and the one thing we've mentioned a little bit, and it's kind of a huge thing, and I think it's gotten kind of old, but I wanted to ask you if you think it's finally going to end, and that is the hate on Gerald McCoy. Do you think that Bucs fans in Tampa or around the country are going to continue to hate on this guy, even though he continues to perform at a high level?
Here's what I think, and this actually, I think, makes a really good transition, Ben, because you guys have something on your show called Beer Bets. So explain to us, for people who may not know, what is a beer bet with Bucs and Brews?
A beer bet is where the the guys on our show, the four of us, we come up with a prediction for the upcoming game or something that we think is going to happen, and we challenge the other guys to take us up on that bet. If they lose the bet, like say I said something along the lines of, Jameis Winston will throw for 300 yards this week. If they agree with that, they won't take me up on that. If they think Jameis will get 300 yards, they won't take me up on the bet. But if they think he'll get less, then they will take me up on that. And then coming on the show the next week, if they lost that bet, we tally up the numbers, who wins and who loses, and the people who have the most losses have to chug beers live on the show.
All right. Well, I am going to make a beer bet with you right here, right now, And I welcome all 4 of your guys to take me up on it, and they can all go double or nothing, however they want to do it. But this is my bold prediction, and it answers your question. Here's the thing. The hate on Gerald McCoy will stop when Gerald McCoy gets to double-digit sacks. Okay. That's if he goes out, that's the only thing that does it, right? I mean, the only thing that cures hate for a team is wins. And for an individual player is for them to get the one thing that people measure to know if they're doing a good job. And for a defensive tackle, it's going to be sacks. You know, right. They're not going to count the batted down balls. They're not going to count the tackles for loss. They're going to count sacks. And Gerald McCoy, I believe, is going to be a double-digit sacker this season. But here's my beer bet. I bet you guys that the Bucs defense will not only have a double-digit sacker this season, I think that they will have multiple double-digit sackers this season for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers defense.
That's a heck of a beer bet.
And it's not a one game. We're going to have to wait till the end of the season, but I think that's going to come to be true.
Right. And in honor of the segment, I think I have to take you up on that. And I think that's a lofty goal. I hope they do it, but I will take you up on that bet. And I'll let you know if we'll interact on Twitter. Yeah. And we'll see if the other guys on the show want to take you up on that as well.
Yeah, but I do. And I think, by the way, I think it's Gerald McCoy will be one of them. I would have said possibly Jacquez Smith, but I think Robert Ayers might be the other one. He seems like the most likely candidate to me. Quan and Levante could get close. They really could. I don't know if they'll break the double-digit mark, but they could get close. But I think Gerald will hit double-digit sacks. I think somebody else will. But when Gerald does hit double-digit sacks, I think that's when the hate on Gerald McCoy stops. Because he will have been performing, and it'll start washing that taste out of their mouth. And I think he's going to do it this season. So,
right,
that's my thing. So, well, Ben, I don't know about you, but my beer is empty. I have drained it to the bottom over here. Actually, I've drained 2 over the course of the show here. So, well, hey, listen, fans out there, if you would like to chime in on Ben's and mine conversation today, you can do that in a couple of ways on Facebook or Twitter at the Pewtercast, or you can drop me an email to thepewtercast@gmail.com. Go ahead and in the subject line, put Bucs and Brews response or something like that, and I'll make sure that it gets over to Ben and the guys over there at Bucs and Brews. We do respond to all forms of communication, and keep in mind, if it's pretty good, I might read it on air. I might not, but I might. You never know. Well, hey, Ben, I want to thank you so much for being on the podcast, being a guest here today, man. It has been an absolute blast having you here from over at the Bucs and Brews podcast. Why don't you tell everybody where they can find you guys on the internet?
Yeah, and honestly, it's been great to be here, man. Thanks for having me, and thanks for having the Bucs and Brews podcast. And fans can find us on Twitter at Bucs and Brews. We're also on iTunes. Again, just like you asked, give us a review. Yeah. We definitely welcome those. We're also on Podcast Addict and Stitcher as well. So yeah, thanks. I invite everybody to come listen to us. We have a good time, and we hope you have a good time too when you listen to us.
Yeah, well, guys, you absolutely should go over there and listen to the Bucs and Brews podcast. They are a fantastic addition to the podcasting community here for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Well, listen, fans, as we get out of here, I just wanted to take a second and talk about something that we've kind of been talking about through the course of this episode. There are challenges in life that do seem insurmountable. We all come up against them sometimes. And all the so-called experts would say that there's no way you're winning this one. Kind of like they're saying that there's no way the Bucs are going to win in Arizona. And you know what? Honestly, in life, that's the kind of stuff you have to ignore. No one ever achieved anything great if there wasn't a real likelihood that failure was a possibility. But in there is also always hope that you could pull out the win. Your job is to find the hope, grab onto it, and drag it out into the daylight. And you never know. You might wind up killing that giant and cutting his head off with his own sword. Or maybe you'll clip the wings of 2 types of birds 2 weeks in a row. Well, until next time, Bucs fans, stay chippy and go Bucs.
Go Bucs!